I pulled 15 kids out of that wreck. Cold, crying, but alive. And what I saw, I kept with me for years, but I decided to reveal it today. My name's Jack Whitmore. I'm 69 now. Been retired going on 12 years. I was a firefighter in Rochester, New York for over 3 decades. Rescue unit. That was my thing. Not so much the ladders and hoses. I was the one you called when someone was trapped. Inside a car, under rubble, down in a ravine. The kind of stuff you train for but never quite get used to. I still live just outside Rochester. Got a little house out in Greece near the lake. Quiet place. Me and my dog, Buddy. Wife passed in 2017. Cancer. She was tough as hell. Nurse for 40 years. 2 kids, both grown. One's in Buffalo, the other out in Oregon. Grandkids I see when I can, but not as often as I'd like. Since I left the department, I mostly keep to myself. Some mornings I'll walk by the station just to hear the radio chatter through the windows. Habit, I guess. You can take the man out of the job, but, well, you know the rest. When you do the kind of work I did, some things stick. Some days were loud and messy and gone in a blink, but others, they stay with you. Not because they were the biggest or the bloodiest, but because something in you changed that day. You walked in as one person and walked out as someone else. For me, that was February 6, 1987. I didn't talk about it much, not even with the guys. It's the kind of story that makes people tilt their heads and go quiet, makes them look at you different. And truth is, I never could explain it all, not even to myself. Back in '87, I was 31, strong, stubborn, bit of a smartass. Still had that nothing can kill me attitude which doesn't last long in this line of work. I'd been with the department about 7 years. Already seen more than most folks should. Fires, car wrecks, drownings, you name it. But I loved the job, loved the rhythm of it. Early mornings, bad coffee, gear checks, the sound of the engine turning over, the click of the radio, the banter between the guys, half of it nonsense, the other half just ways of keeping your nerves steady. We had a good crew, real tight. You don't do this kind of work unless you trust the guy next to you. Not just to know what he's doing, but to care. To go in after you if it all goes to hell. Me and Tony DeLuca, we were usually paired up for rescues. He was a big Italian guy from Iron Dequoit, laughed too loud, cursed too much, but had a heart the size of the city. He'd climb into any hole, dive into any fire, long as you had his back. And I did. Every damn time. The winters up there, man, they were rough. Snow so thick you couldn't see past the hood. Ice slick like glass. You learned quick how to drive in it, or you didn't last. That winter of '87 had been especially brutal. Cold that cut through your gloves. We'd already pulled a couple of folks out of ditches that season. Power outages, old folks freezing in their homes, the usual upstate chaos. So when the call came in that morning, another storm, another vehicle down somewhere, we didn't think much of it. Just grabbed our gear and rolled. But this one wasn't like the others. And it sure as hell wasn't just another accident. I'll get into the details later. The road, the wreck, the kids, all of it. But before I do, you gotta understand something about me. I'm not a guy who believes in ghosts. I don't go around chasing Bigfoot or seeing angels in the clouds. I believe in broken bones, burned skin, seat belts that save lives, things I can touch, things I can do something about. But that day, out in the mountains, that's the day I stopped thinking I had all the answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's not such a bad thing. Back then, life was pretty damn simple. I was living in a rented place on Norton Street, not too far from the station. Little duplex. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me, my wife, and our first kid who'd just turned 2. Money was tight, like it always is when you're starting a family on a city paycheck. But we made it work. She worked nights at the hospital and I pulled shifts at the firehouse. We'd pass each other in the driveway, sometimes not even saying a word. Just a tired smile and a kiss on the forehead. That's how it was. I worked out of Station 7 near Ridge Road, Rescue Unit 3. Our truck wasn't new, not by a long shot. She rattled when you hit 50 and leaked like hell in the rain. But we kept her clean, kept her ready. That was our job. You didn't complain. You checked your gear, ran your drills, cleaned what needed cleaning, and waited for the bell. The bell? You never got used to it. That sudden buzz, loud as hell, right when you're halfway through a sandwich or just settling in for a nap on the couch. It didn't matter what time it was, midnight, 3 a.m., you jumped up and moved. Instinct, muscle memory. You'd grab your coat, hit the pole, and meet the rest of the crew in the truck before your brain even caught up. Most calls weren't glamorous. They never are. You'd get some drunk in a ditch, a false alarm at the school, smoke from a toaster, sometimes a heart attack in the middle of Sunday dinner. You learned quick that it wasn't about hero stuff. It was about showing up. You were the one people called when everything else went wrong. And that meant you showed up with steady hands, a calm voice, and no room for panic. The guys at the house, they became like brothers. Not the kind you choose, but the kind that bleed with you. You laughed together, sweated together, sometimes cried in the truck when no one else was looking. We didn't talk about emotions much. Hell, back then, if you said the word therapy around the station, someone would probably throw a donut at your head. But the truth is, we carried a lot. Each call left a little mark. You didn't notice it at the time, but years later you'd be sitting alone on your porch, and some siren in the distance would hit you like a brick to the chest. I remember one winter, I think it was January of that same year, we pulled a kid out of a frozen pond in Iron de Quoit. He couldn't have been older than 10. Fell through the ice chasing a dog. We got him breathing again, barely. I held him the whole ride to Strong Memorial, hands numb, couldn't feel my fingers, but I remember the look on his mom's face when we rolled him in. That stayed with me. So yeah, that's the kind of work we did. Hard, cold, sometimes thankless, but it mattered. You didn't do it for the money. God knows there wasn't much of that. You did it because you were good at it, and because you knew, deep down, that if you didn't show up, maybe no one would. Tony and I, we'd been partners long enough that we didn't have to speak much on scene. He'd give me a look and I'd know what tool he needed. I'd hear the tone in his voice and know if we were staying or backing out. That kind of trust. It doesn't come easy. It's earned in blood, sweat, and long-ass nights in the back of a cold truck. My wife used to hate the winters. Said I always came home smelling like diesel and smoke. My boots would leave wet marks all through the house. She never really slept when I was on shift, especially during storms. Said the wind made her nervous, like it carried bad news. And she wasn't wrong. Storms in upstate New York hit different. The kind of cold that burns. Snow so heavy it feels like the sky's fallen. We'd be out in the middle of nowhere sometimes, trying to reach a wreck off some county road that didn't even show up on the maps. No GPS back then. Just a radio, a set of coordinates, and whatever flashlight you had that still worked. And God help you if the batteries were dead. That February morning before the call, we were all sitting around the kitchen table at the house. Tony was playing cards with McCleary. I was fixing my boots, relacing them. The younger guys were joking about how many days until spring. I remember thinking, this storm's gonna screw up the whole county. But I didn't say it. No one likes to jinx it. The snow had started early that day. Thick flakes, heavy as cotton. Visibility was already down to crap, and it wasn't even 10 a.m. We'd already responded to 2 minor skids. Nothing serious, just folks being careless. Then the call came. Dispatch said, school bus, possible rollover, multiple children on board. Location, County Road 14, near the Adirondack Trailhead. I looked at Tony, he looked at me. And just like that, everything changed. I remember the exact sound of that dispatch. Not the words, but the tone. It was clipped, rushed. You can tell when a dispatcher's holding something back. They don't mean to, but their voice gives it away. That tension. You feel it in your gut before your brain even registers what's going on. Rescue 3, Engine 9, respond. Bus rollover, possible entrapment, multiple children, County Road 14. Near trailhead, Adirondack access, weather's bad, approach with caution. That's what came through. Tony was already standing before the last word hit. I dropped the lace in my hand and grabbed my jacket. We moved fast. Everyone did. There's a certain speed to things when you hear children over the radio. No one needs to be told twice. The roads were a nightmare. I was driving. Tony was on radio. Visibility was maybe 50 feet, tops. Snow coming down sideways. Ice underneath that fresh layer, slick like glass. Every time I hit the brakes, I could feel the truck's weight fighting me. But we pushed on. Took us almost 40 minutes to get there. Would have been 20 on a clear day. We kept listening for updates, but nothing was coming through. Just static. That's another bad sign. Radios drop when you get too deep in the woods or when the weather gets thick. Either way, you're blind. And when you're blind, you trust instinct. County Road 14 ain't really a road, not in the way most folks think of them. It's more of a long, twisting stretch of half-maintained gravel that runs parallel to the ridge before it drops off into a ravine. In summer, it's used by hikers and campers. In winter, not many folks go out there. Too dangerous. Too isolated. We spotted the skid marks first. Barely visible under the snow, but deep enough to show something heavy had gone off. Right near a curve with no guardrail. There was a break in the brush, and just beyond that, nothing. Just white. Tony said, "There," and I killed the engine. We geared up fast. No words. Didn't need any, just got to work. The slope was steep, maybe 20, 25 feet down. And there, about halfway into the drop, wedged against a cluster of trees, was the bus. Yellow, big, tilted hard to the left. One side crushed in, windows gone, roof bent. It didn't look survivable, not from up top. I remember feeling that thing in my chest, you know, that heaviness, that quiet kind of fear you don't admit out loud. Tony went down first, roped in. I followed. And then, the noise hit us. Not sirens, not engines, screaming, high-pitched, panicked, children. And that's when instinct took over. The snow made everything harder. It was in our eyes, our mouths, our gear. We had to break the rear emergency door to get in. The front of the bus was buried into the slope. The door twisted and jammed shut. We called out as we entered. "Fire department, can you hear me? We're here to help." Voices responded, frantic, scared, some too weak to yell. We started pulling kids out one by one. Some could move, some couldn't. A couple were bleeding from the head, others just shaking, wide-eyed. It was pitch dark inside. Flashlights barely cut through the steam and smoke from the wreck. I remember one little girl, curly brown hair, maybe 7 years old, who just stared at me. Didn't cry, didn't move, just stared like she'd been frozen in place. I had to lift her out myself. She never said a word. Tony worked the back with me, clearing space, calming them, handing off to the guys up top. We had to make a line, pass each kid up through the broken rear, through the snow, up the slope. It was slow, real slow, but somehow, we kept going. I don't know how many trips I made in and out of that bus. At some point I lost track. Everything became a blur of snow, screaming, slipping, reaching. My hands stopped feeling anything, just worked on their own. One kid, then another, and another. Then it got quiet. Too quiet. We swept the bus front to back. Searched under seats, in aisles, checked every cranny. We did head counts with the list the school had faxed in. 15 children. All accounted for, all alive. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. As we were finishing up, I turned back toward the front one more time. Don't know why. Something in me just said, "Go." Tony was outside now. Everyone was. It was just me and the dark. I climbed over the broken seats, flashlight cutting through the fog. And then, I heard it. A voice. Faint. Just a whisper. Help. But it wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from outside, underneath. I dropped to the floor, pressed my ear to the bus. Nothing. I crawled out the rear, slid under the wreckage, lay flat in the snow, and listened. Again. Help. Clear as day. A boy's voice, younger than the rest. I called for backup, told him we might have missed one. Maybe he was thrown. Maybe he was trapped. They all looked at me strange, but no one argued. We searched the slope. We combed that whole damn ravine. Thermal sensors, dogs, grid search, everything. And we found nothing. No extra footprints, no drag marks. No sign anyone was ever there besides the 15 we pulled out. 15. No more, no less. Later at the hospital, I asked the nurse. Asked her if anyone said there was someone else. She shook her head. They keep saying you found them all, she said. Every one of them said the same thing. The firemen found us. I said all of them. She nodded. Yeah, all 16. The slope was worse than we thought. I remember standing at the edge, snow coming down in heavy waves, just staring at the yellow roof of that bus half buried in the trees. It was angled hard, maybe 30 degrees, like it had slid down and then stopped just short of flipping over completely. If those trees hadn't been there, it would have gone all the way down to the creek bed, and there wouldn't have been any kids left to save. I could hear 'em from up top, the screaming, not just crying, but panic. That pure, chest-tightening, survival kind of panic you never forget. High-pitched voices, banging on metal. I looked at Tony and didn't say a word. We just moved. We anchored ropes to the truck, grabbed our harnesses, and started down. It wasn't graceful. The snow was thick, and underneath it was frozen mud, slick and uneven. Every step felt like it might give. I slipped once, slammed my shin into a stump, but didn't stop. Couldn't. When we got to the wreck, I remember putting my hand on the side of the bus. It was ice cold, not just from the snow, but from how long it had been sitting there. It was quiet now. Too quiet. I yelled, "Fire department, stay calm, we're here." And then it erupted. Kids crying, shouting, banging on the inside. Tony took the back, trying to force open the emergency exit. It was bent in, jammed shut. I started kicking in windows on the right side. Most were already shattered from the impact. The glass crunched under my boots as I climbed through one of the broken frames. Inside, it was chaos. Seats were ripped loose, some tilted sideways. There was blood on the windows, backpacks scattered everywhere, a lunchbox crushed under a seat. The kids were huddled in groups, most of them toward the rear, where the impact wasn't as bad. Some were screaming. Some were frozen still, just sitting there wide-eyed, mouths open, like their brains hadn't caught up yet. One boy, blonde hair, maybe 9, was standing over another who had a gash on his forehead. Blood was running down his cheek, but he wasn't making a sound, just sitting there, blinking real slow. Shock. I moved fast, but careful, started talking to them, one by one. "You're gonna be okay. We're getting you out, but I need you to stay calm." Some nodded. Others didn't respond at all. A couple reached for me like they were drowning. Tony came through the back once he got the door free. We started doing triage on the spot. Who could move, who couldn't, who needed immediate help. We didn't wait for stretchers. Didn't have time. We carried them, one at a time, through the broken rear, up the slope, handing them off to the other guys waiting at the top. I carried the quiet ones first, the ones not making noise. You learn quick in this job, quiet can mean trouble. One little girl had a broken arm. I didn't realize it until I was halfway up the hill with her and she whimpered, real soft, like she was trying not to be a burden. I looked down and saw her wrist bent at a wrong angle, already swelling. She looked up at me and whispered, "Am I gonna die?" I still hear that sometimes. I said, "No, sweetheart, not today." We kept going, back and forth, back and forth. The wind picked up and my coat was soaked through, but you don't think about that in the moment. You just move. I remember hauling one boy, he was heavy, maybe 12 or 13, over my shoulder, and halfway up he started crying real hard. Not 'cause he was hurt, but 'cause he thought his little sister was still inside. We got him to the top, and before I could turn back, he grabbed my coat and begged me not to leave her. "Please, please find her." So I went back in. Found her curled up under one of the front seats, eyes shut tight, whispering something over and over. I leaned in close to hear. She was saying, "He told me to hide. He told me to wait." I asked, "Who told you, honey?" She opened her eyes, looked past me and said, "The boy in the red hoodie." There was no red hoodie on that bus. It took over an hour to get all 15 out, By the end, my legs were jelly. My hands didn't work right. I had frost built up on my mustache, and I was breathing so hard I felt dizzy. But they were out, every last one of them. Medics loaded them up, rushed them off to hospitals in different directions. Parents were already starting to show up at the roadblock, some in tears, some screaming. I didn't talk to any of them. I just stood there, watching the back doors of the ambulances close. I should have felt relief. I should have felt proud. But I didn't. Not right away. There was something gnawing at me. Like I'd missed something. Like it wasn't over. Tony came up behind me, clapped a hand on my back. "Hell of a job," he said. But I didn't say anything. I was still looking back at the tree line, at the wreck, at the empty space where, for some reason, I knew someone else had been. And I'll never forget the feeling that hit me right then, like someone was watching. Not from the road, not from the trees, from underneath. We'd already called in recovery for the bus. A flatbed couldn't get down the slope, so they were bringing in winches and a crane unit from the next county. That meant we had time to stand around in the cold and try to make sense of what the hell just happened. 15 kids, injured sure, but alive. That don't happen much, not in a crash like that. We should have been pulling out bodies, not survivors. But somehow, they all made it. Scraped, shaken, but breathing. Tony sat on the bumper of our rig, peeling off his gloves, hands red and raw. He looked at me and said, "That bus should have rolled all the way down." I nodded. I'd been thinking the same thing. And then he added, "You ever get the feeling we didn't do this alone?" I didn't answer, just stared down at the slope, at the trees, at the place where the bus had stopped. There was a line of crushed branches maybe 10 feet from where it landed. Beyond that, nothing but air and snow. I walked back down, alone this time, needed to see it again with clear eyes. My legs were tired, but I made my way around the wreck, down to the front end, where it was all bent and twisted against the tree trunk, and that's when I saw it. A trail, not a big one, just a narrow line in the snow, going off the opposite side of the bus, toward the woods. Fresh, not animal, no prints I could match. Just a smooth line, like someone had dragged a bag, or a body. I followed it, maybe 50, 60 feet. Then it just stopped. No end, no hole. No sign of someone fallen. It just vanished, like the trail gave up. I called out. Felt stupid, but I did it anyway. "Hello? Anyone there?" Nothing, just wind, snow crackling in the trees. But then, out of nowhere, I got this chill. Not cold, not the kind of chill you get from standing still in a storm. This was inside me, deep, made the hairs on my neck stand up, made my jaw clench. And I swear, I heard breathing, right behind me. I turned quick, light sweeping across trunks and branches. Nobody, just me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Got home around midnight, after the paperwork, the questions, the debrief. My wife had left a plate for me on the stove. I didn't touch it. Just sat at the table with a beer in my hand, staring out the back window. I kept hearing that voice. Help. Over and over. Real quiet, like it was caught between this world and something else. I thought maybe I was just rattled. Maybe the stress was messing with me. Wouldn't be the first time. But this felt different. Not like shock. Not like exhaustion. It felt pointed, like someone was still waiting. Next day, I went to the hospital. Just needed to see the kids. Make sure they were all right. They let me in the pediatric unit. Nurse walked me room to room. Some of them smiled. Some looked away. One boy hugged me so hard I thought he'd never let go. Another gave me a crayon drawing, me with a helmet carrying him out of fire. He'd added wings to my back. I didn't know what to say. Then the nurse said, "One of the girls keeps asking for you." She took me down the hall to a room with a cartoon wallpaper border and a stuffed bear on the bed. The girl with the broken arm, the one who'd whispered about the boy in the red hoodie. She looked at me real calm, like she'd been expecting me. I pulled up a chair and said, "Hey there, how you feeling?" She shrugged. "Sore." Then she asked, "Did you find him?" I froze. "Who, sweetheart?" "The boy who told me to wait. He said you'd come, that I'd be safe if I just stayed still." I tried to smile. "You mean your brother?" She shook her head. "No, he wasn't on the bus. I don't know him. He just showed up." "Where?" She pointed under the seat. "He crawled in with me after we crashed, said to stay quiet, said help was coming." I looked at the nurse. She looked back, eyes wide. I asked, "What did he look like?" The girl furrowed her brow. Red hoodie, brown hair, kinda quiet. Looked sad. That hit me hard. I remembered checking that seat. There was nobody there. No one matched that description. I said, "What happened to him?" She looked down. "He crawled out before you got there, said his part was done." I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio, didn't call anyone. I just sat in my truck in the driveway, hands on the wheel, snow building up on the windshield. And I thought, maybe we missed one. Maybe we didn't. Maybe there was never a 16th. Or maybe he was never meant to be found. You do this job long enough, you see things you can't explain. People surviving things they shouldn't. People dying when they should have walked away. You learn to live with it. You push it down, file it away under one of those things. But this one wouldn't stay filed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that line in the snow, that red hoodie, that empty space under the seat, and I kept wondering, who helped us that day? Because I'm telling you plain, I don't think we saved those kids on our own. The days after the rescue were a blur. You'd think saving 15 kids in the middle of a snowstorm would be the kind of thing people talk about for weeks, right? News vans at the station, reporters asking for interviews, some kind of medal maybe. But it didn't happen like that. We got a quick mention on the evening news. School bus crash, no fatalities thanks to local responders. Then the coverage just stopped. No follow-ups, no cameras at the station, no deep dives into how the hell a bus full of kids slid off a cliff and no one died. I remember Tony saying, "Guess they figured it ain't dramatic enough if nobody's dead." He laughed when he said it, but I could tell it bothered him too. The department gave us a quiet pat on the back. Chief bought us all pizza, said he was proud, told us to write it up for the report and move on. But I couldn't move on, not really. There were little things that didn't add up. First was the roster. 15 names. The school was sure of it. Teachers, parents, bus driver. Everyone confirmed. 15 kids were supposed to be on that bus. But the way I remembered it, it felt like more. I kept seeing flashes in my head. Moments that didn't line up. Like hands reaching for mine from places I hadn't searched. Like voices calling out in corners that didn't exist. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe my brain filled in gaps. Or maybe there was a 16th. Someone no one else remembered. About a week later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name and the firehouse's mailing address written in tight, careful cursive. Inside was a thank you card. Plain, store-bought, nothing fancy. It said, "You pulled my daughter from the wreck. She said a boy in a red hoodie told her to stay calm. I don't know what that means, but thank you for trusting your instincts. A grateful mother." No name, no signature. Just that. I showed it to Tony. He stared at it a long time, then handed it back. "Same kid who talked to you?" I nodded. He didn't say anything else. Didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing. I started having trouble sleeping. Not nightmares exactly, more like noise. Like someone moving around just out of sight. I'd lie in bed and hear that whisper, help. Always faint, always far. My wife noticed. She asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said no. And I meant it. Because how do you talk about something like that without sounding crazy? She was used to me bringing home heavy stuff. Burned kids, dead drivers. Sometimes I'd come home and sit in the shower for an hour, just trying to wash the smell of diesel and blood off me. She never pushed, just kept the house warm and the lights low. But this was different. This wasn't about what I saw. It was about what I felt, and what I couldn't explain. A couple months later, I ran into one of the parents at a grocery store. I didn't recognize her at first. She looked different out of the snow, out of the chaos. But she recognized me. Came right up, hugged me, started crying. Said her son still talked about the man with the quiet eyes who carried him up the hill. Said he was sleeping with the lights on but getting better. I asked if he ever mentioned anyone else from that day. Any of the other kids. Maybe a boy in a red hoodie. She blinked. Thought for a moment. No, she said. But he drew a picture once. Said it was his guardian. She pulled out her wallet and showed me a folded drawing. Crayon on paper. A stick figure boy with brown hair, red hoodie, smiling, standing next to a stick figure version of her son who was frowning. No face on the boy in red, just a blank circle where the features should have been. I handed it back. Said, "Thanks." Then I walked out without buying anything. After that, I stopped bringing it up. Not because I forgot. Not because I let it go. But because I learned that some things just don't belong in conversation. You start telling people you heard voices under a wreck, and saw trails in the snow that vanished, and got a thank you note from a ghost. Well, you're going to find yourself eaten alone pretty quick. So I filed it under silence, kept it where I keep the rest of the strange stuff from the job. Like the time I cut a guy out of a car and he kept saying he could see his mom standing by the guardrail. She'd been dead 10 years. Or the little girl who looked me dead in the eye after a fire and said, "It's not your fault. He's with God now." She was 4. We never found any trace of a 16th kid. No missing person reports. No local boys with red hoodies gone that week. No footprints, no evidence, just memories. Memories that didn't match the paperwork. Sometimes that's how it is in this line of work. You do the job, you save the ones you can, and you carry the rest. You'd think that after all these years I'd have some kind of answer, but I don't, and maybe that's the part that gets me the most. It's not the noise. It's not the storm. It's not the blood or the wreck or even the kids crying in the dark. It's that quiet, still space in the back of my mind that never shut up. I don't talk about that day, not in detail. Not with my kids, not even with Tony anymore. We stopped bringing it up maybe 2-3 years after it happened, like we both silently agreed to leave it behind. But I didn't leave it behind. Not really. It came with me. Every move, every season, every quiet winter night when the wind gets strong and I hear something shift outside, and I freeze for a second because my brain jumps back to that hillside, that cold metal, that whisper. Help. I still hear it sometimes. Not every night. Not like it was at first. But now and then, when the house is too quiet and the snow starts to fall just right, and Buddy's laying on the floor snoring away, I swear I hear that voice in the walls. Just faint. Not scary, not angry, just there. Like it's waiting on me to do something. People ask me sometimes what call sticks with me the most. You get that a lot when you retire, at cookouts, at church. Folks lean in and say, "What's the one thing you never forgot?" I usually give them the pond story, or the apartment fire on Dewey. Stuff that's hard, but explainable. The kind of story that makes people nod and say, "Wow," and then they move on. I never tell them about the bus. Because how do you explain something you don't understand yourself? How do you say, "I think I was helped that day by someone who wasn't supposed to be there"? How do you tell people that you keep a folded piece of notebook paper in your drawer with handwriting that showed up in your mailbox without a name, and you pull it out every winter just to make sure it's still real? You don't. You just carry it, like a scar that never closes. Sometimes I wonder what happened to those kids. I saw a few of them once or twice in the years after. Some came by the station with cookies, or little drawings, or thank you notes written in shaky handwriting. I shook their hands. I told them they were brave, but I never asked them what they remembered. I think I was scared to hear the truth. Scared they'd say they didn't remember me at all. Or worse, that they remembered someone else. There's this thing that happens. After enough years in rescue, you start to doubt your own memories. Not because they fade, but because you've lived so many versions of the same pain that they all start to bleed together. You start to question which face belonged to which call, which scream came from which wreck, whether the hand you grabbed belonged to a girl in '87 or a boy in '93. But not this one. This one's clear, sharp, like it happened last week. The snow, the sound of boots crunching through it, the weight of a child in my arms, the hiss of breath through busted glass. And that feeling, like I wasn't alone in that bus, like someone was behind me, helping, guiding, watching. I'm not a religious man, not really. I was raised Catholic, but by the time I hit 20, I'd stopped going to church. Life got busy. Shift work made Sundays impossible. And after a while, it just didn't fit anymore. But I've seen things that don't add up. People pulled from crushed cars with barely a scratch. A man who flatlined for 7 minutes and walked out of the hospital the next day, talking about his granddad's voice telling him to get up. A baby in a collapsed apartment who cried just loud enough for us to find her under a dresser when we were about to call off the search. I don't have names for those things. I don't try to explain them, but I remember. And the bus? That's the one I think about when the doubt creeps in, when I feel small, when I wonder if anything I did really mattered. Because I know what I felt in that moment. I know what I heard. I know there was a reason I kept going back in, even when I thought I was done, even when every part of me was telling me to sit down, catch my breath, let the medics handle the rest. Something pulled me back inside, not adrenaline, not pride, something else. And if I'm honest, I'm still looking for it. Maybe one day I'll get an answer. Maybe not. But I'll tell you this. If I could go back, do it all over again, I would. Even the mystery. Even the part that never let me sleep quite right again. Because those kids, they got to grow up. And maybe, just maybe, there was one more among them that day. Someone none of us could quite see. Someone who stayed just long enough to make sure they made it home. And if that's true, then I wasn't the only one doing the rescuing. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you. I didn't think I'd ever talk about this out loud. Not like this. But maybe it's time. I'm 69 now. Most of the guys I served with are either gone or too sick to remember much. Tony passed 2 winters ago. Heart gave out, quietly, in his sleep. I went to the funeral, sat in the back, didn't say much. Just watched his grandkids light a candle and talk about how brave he was. I wanted to stand up and say, "You don't even know the half of it." But I didn't, because that's not what we do. We carry it, all of it. We carry the things we saw, the things we couldn't fix, the things we'll never explain. And we tell ourselves it's just part of the job, just noise in the background. But it ain't. It becomes part of you, like bone. That day on the mountain, it changed me. Not just because of what I did, but because of what I felt, what I heard, what I still don't understand. And the older I get, the more I realize, not everything's meant to be understood. Sometimes you don't get closure. You don't get answers. You just get a moment, a look, a sound, a trail in the snow that leads to nowhere, and yet somehow tells you everything you need to know. If there's anyone out there who's seen something like this, heard a voice that wasn't supposed to be there, felt a pull towards something that didn't come from you, you're not crazy. You're not alone. I've met people over the years, paramedics, cops, nurses, hell, even a tow truck guy, who've hinted at stories they don't know how to finish. They'll say, "There was this one time," and then they stop. They shake their head, and you can see it in their eyes. Something they can't say, because they think no one would believe it. Well, I believe you. Some of us have been in places where the line between what is and what might be gets real thin. Doesn't matter what you call it. Luck, fate, God, a kid in a red hoodie. If it helped someone live, I'm not going to argue with it. I don't need a name for it. I just know I wasn't alone in that bus. If you've got a story like that, maybe it's time to share it. Even if you don't have all the pieces, even if it still keeps you up sometimes, tell someone. Hell, tell me. Leave a comment or send a letter if that's more your style. I may be old, but I still read everything. Because these stories, they matter. They remind us that this world's not just numbers and noise and tragedy. There's something else at work, something quiet, something that doesn't always want credit. And maybe, just maybe, that something shows up when it matters most. Thank you for listening. And if you're out there, kid, wherever you are, you did good. We never forgot you.